Want to make these cool aesthetic slides on Canva? Look nowhere else. Let me take you through a step-by-step process of how I create 10 beautiful, neutral, minimalist aesthetic slides for your corporate presentation. So obviously the first place that I go to is Pinterest, especially if you want a color palette. So the cool thing about Canva is that when you import an image, it extracts a color palette from that image. So it's going to select a few colors and it's going to assemble it for you. And whenever you go and pick a color that you want to use, say for the font or for some elements or perhaps the background, anything you can imagine, you can basically use a color from the palette that Canva has arranged for you. So that is a very cool feature in Canva and a really great tip. And it really does speed up the design process. And one of the reasons why I love Canva. So the first step is creating a front page. I'm going to keep that very simple with just presentation slides. I might go back and, change it up once I decide the style I'm going to use for this presentation. So when you're doing a presentation, you want to keep everything very consistent. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to decide where I'm going to put my main headers and where I'm going to put, the body of the text and where I can add some other elements. So every time we're going to just duplicate this slide and we're going to build on it or we're going to take away from it and we're going to alter it for different uses. So as you can see, I'm going for the very clean and very minimalist style with very clean lines. The text is a little funky and a little bit more detailed for a minimalist, aesthetic. But I don't know. I like to use a combo of two different fonts so that, it balances it out. So usually the body of whatever text you want to add to your presentation needs to be easy to read. So I used a very simple font for the text, and a more, detailed font for the body. And as you can see at the bottom, I'm adding this little footer and that is going to help to number the slides. And you can actually go ahead and also put in some text in that little footer on the slide. And that is what I'm doing right now. I also want to keep in mind the colors that I'm choosing. Everything is very balanced. Not everything should look the same so that we can differentiate which part of the presentation you are moving to. So the header looks very distinctly different to the body. So what you can see me doing right now is basically looking for that lorem ipsum text. And because I'm making a template, I don't want to write custom text. So when you design, it's really handy to go and, copy and paste that lorem ipsum. It's like this Latin text. And that's what designers use when they want to, fill in their, add some text, but they're not sure what's going to be there yet. And they want to present their design to a client. So now I duplicated that slide, as you can see. So in Canva, you basically get a selection of graphs that you can use. And I'm going to match the colors to the rest of my design as well. And that is what I'm going to use to create slides specifically for, stats. So all you have to type in is chart and you'll see all of these different designs and you can basically use any of them in your designs. You can go even further and customize the numbers that you want to put on the graph, on your chart, but that is for another video. Right now, I am just worried about how everything looks and the aesthetics. So now I'm creating another slide where I'm going to add two charts and I'm going to just add one line of text that you can fill in. This is for if you don't have much to say, but you want to display some numbers instead. And I think that is actually very useful. Moving on to imagery, I'm going to add these frames. So the way Canva works, it's different from Photoshop and Illustrator in the sense that you have to use, well, they don't have a clipping mask feature. So you have to use frames with different shapes, which you have a huge selection of, to basically clip an image to that frame, that shape. So you can drop in pictures, drag and drop, basically. So this slide is, if you want to display some pictures, some imagery, and you just want to give a bit of visual to your presentation, whoever you're presenting to. And it's nice to give some variety. Sometimes you have more images to display. And this is not hard at all, guys. Like, this is why I love Canva. It's the ease that comes with designing, with creating very simple designs, and they look very professional and very aesthetic. You just need to activate that designer mind, and you can create some really cool things in Canva. I'm gonna create this slide that's a variation. So there's a lot of text aligned to the left with a frame that you can drop an image in on the right. So here is a trick to keep all your text aligned. Duplicate the slide so that everything stays in the same position, and you can just drag that little mark on each side, on the left and the right, and that is how you can basically reposition the text. So now I'm creating another slide where there are bullet points if you want to enumerate some key words, key points, make a list, and I feel like this is a very essential type of slide in any presentation. So I'm minimizing the introduction text at the top, and I'm creating this bulleted point list that you can customize at the bottom. So now this is just me fiddling around with the text size just so that I can fit in as much information as possible. And, I'm just checking my slides to see that all the numbers are in order and that everything is making sense and looking very consistent. I honestly hope I'm not going too fast, but I sped up this video because I didn't want to sit here for 1 hour. Oh, gosh. So then I got this idea in my head, this glimpse, like this image, this flash of creating these gradient stylized bubbles or highlights, and then you can just type in some text in those highlights. And I just thought this looks so cute and very aesthetic, and that's what I'm going for. As you can see, I created a gradient with the same colors in my palette and basically filled that shape in with that gradient, and I think this looks so cute. So to do that, you basically click on the element and it will open your color palette, and then you can pick a gradient and customize it with the colors in your palette. And this is how this feature looks right there. As you can see, those 3 colors that I've selected, you can pick the style of the gradient, and then you pick the colors that you want, and you can pick the colors in your main palette. And it is as simple as that. Now I'm going to insert some text in those highlights, in those little bubbles. I think I'm going to make the text much lighter so that it stands out more, and perhaps use a bolder version of the font that I'm using currently. And yeah, I think this is going to turn out to be so cute. Of course, Canva has this feature where you can type directly in the shape that you've created, but it was aligning a little too much to the left, right at the edge, and I was not liking that look at all. So I placed the text on top of these elements. Now I wanted to play around a bit with some imagery slides, and I was just trying to figure out a way to display, to give people an opportunity to display a bit more imagery. I thought this looked a bit too confined, and I really stayed stuck in this slide because I was trying to figure out, how do I make this look interesting and captivating and less neat and restrained and, boring basically. And I figured that perhaps if I removed the text, all the text and also the footer from the slide, perhaps I can fit in more imagery. And I created this little, arrangement, with the frames. So what's nice about Canva is that you can just drag and resize your frame. So this looks, I use a square one. It was initially square, but I dragged it to be more of a rectangular shape. So basically what you can do is drag and drop images. Canva has such a huge gallery of stock images that you can use, especially if you have Canva Pro like me. Get you Canva Pro. You need to get that. And you can just drag and drop your images right in those frames. That is basically the clip, clipping function in Canva that you can find in Photoshop and sometimes Illustrator. So one of the things that I knew I would have to work on are the filters of the images, because right now they all have different tones, different vibrancy, and just look like they are not part of the same presentation. So I wanted to add a filter, the same filter to each of them so that they looked like they were photographed in more or less the same setting. And that is a little trick that you can always use in your designs to make different elements that you incorporate in your design to look more cohesive. So that is what I'm doing right now. As you can see, look at that. They have a bit of a faded tint. They're not as bright as before. And that basically makes it look like, oh, they were all photographed in the same setting with the same lighting. And that is one of my tips and tricks. Now I wanted to do something a little bit more traditional. As you can see, more imagery options. And this time I added a bit of text. So you can insert a bit of text in the slide, and then you'll have two of these wide shots, and you can use some images on this slide in this way. And I think that is a necessary one. I definitely think it's a necessary type of slide in every presentation. So now I'm just going back and filling all my little frames with some really cute, corporate women images. And guys, I'm really happy with this. It was very fun to do. I'm cleaning up my front page now. I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm not going to, be over the top. But it did look a bit, plain, like it was missing something. So I added this image of this woman in a corporate environment, and I added this square block and basically lowered the opacity to make it look like it was faded, like the pictures faded in the background. And I think that filled that slide a bit more and makes it look much more interesting. Now I'm working on the last slide, which is basically the thank you slide. And I added this little option where you can add, a little quote, little inspirational quotes at the end, or maybe some final comments from the presenter to, close off the presentation. Something motivational, something sympathetic, something that connects you to whoever you're presenting to, your audience. And yeah, I actually really like this. As you can see in the background, I also put that gradient in. And here's me going through my slides, seeing that everything looks as I want it to look. I tried playing around a bit with the animation tool, but that is for another video. So here are all my slides, and guys, I'm truly, truly happy with this. I think it's just so cute. And there's a glimpse of the type of animation features you can use as well. So I'm just going to export this, and Canva allows you to export in so many different formats. I'm going to export this as a PDF. Don't mind me. I just wanted all the slides as PNGs. But thank you for watching, guys. If you stayed till the end, and see you next time. Oh, and you can get this template on Etsy. Bye.